We'll figure this out next time.
Hang out for a little bit.
Hello, how are you?
Yes, I can see that.
Huh?
Yes, I can see that. What should the tires down? I've got UW getting that fixed, but that is all the ants that pulled out there. Yes.
Okay.
About there.
Hey, Corey, don't go nowhere just yet. Let's make sure. Mayor, we at 5.
Yeah, I mean, a work session, nothing official.
Yeah, it won't be official. Good.
Mr. Mayor, we're at 5.
Okay, they have to, because at 5:30 I gotta go.
Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, we're ready to go.
All right, ma'am. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to City of St. Mary's work session, and we are going to be talking about our utility master plan, and we have a presentation. And Mr. Horton, I'm going to turn it over to you for introductions.
Thank you, Mayor and Council and citizens. Just to bring everybody, give you a little bit of backstory. If you'll remember back some time ago, we received a grant to perform a utility master plan for our water, sewer, and our utility master plan for water, sewer, and stormwater. We went into agreement with Freeze and Nichols. I hope I said that right, and they're here and they'll correct me here in a minute. But it's been a long road. We worked very hard with them. This is to close out, we had to finish out this month to close out for the grant purposes. Staff is working through it. We've already identified some areas and some processes to help fund, if you will,
Right.
for the overall process. But I think I need to hush and let Freeze and Nichols do their presentation. And so I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and we'll go from there.
All right. Thank you. Welcome, gentlemen and ladies.
And ladies.
I got ladies.
You got it.
He's good.
All right. Go ahead, folks. You're on.
All right, great. Thank you so much for that nice introduction. Really appreciate that. I'm Paula Feldman with Freeze and Nichols, and I'm joined with Casey Porter, and we've led the utility master plan from the technical side of things, and I've really enjoyed working with Bobby and Chris and his team there at St. Mary's to help develop this master plan. Next slide. So our agenda this afternoon, and again, we appreciate you all being flexible and having us present this afternoon here virtually. We'd rather be there in person with you and enjoying that beautiful city that you all have, but appreciate your flexibility in hosting us virtually. So our agenda for this afternoon is to review the project scope elements. We're going to walk you through some of the technical pieces of that and some of the findings. We're going to do a summary with some of the key takeaways, and then we're going to have some time for questions and provide answers. So that's our overall plan for this afternoon.
All right, if I may interject, this is the mayor. I think we have 5:30.
I'm not sure if you're asking a question. I'm sorry.
Can you hear me?
Barely.
Okay, we have a hard stop at 5:30. If there's any way possible, you can
Okay.
go through this.
Perfect. Yep, absolutely. So this is, we'll definitely can do that. We've kind of tried to condense this into a smaller presentation, so we'll make it snappy. Give time for some questions as well. So this is the overall project scope, and I'm not gonna spend much time on this slide. We're gonna hop through each one of these pieces. So the overall scope was really a blend of, first of all, mapping so we know what your assets were to begin with, and then looking at condition assessment, doing some rehabilitation, capital improvements planning. We did forecasting, working with the planning department as well as the water sewer folks, and built models. That's basically computer models of the water wastewater systems, developed a capacity infrastructure plan using those models, and then looked at revenue sufficiency for the water and sewer system. So that's a big picture overview of the overall scope of the project, and Casey's going to jump in and give some more of the technical details.
Thank you. So there's going to be kind of two branches to this. One will be the condition assessment, which leads to a rehab CIP, which is essentially maintaining and renewing what you have. And then there's going to be a component which we call the capacity or the expansion CIP, which is based on forecasting how you're growing and what else do you need to build to accommodate that growth. And so those two things, the rehab side and the capacity side, were kind of developed independently, and then they come back together at the end to do the revenue sufficiency evaluation and pull the plan together. But it all started with mapping. You have a geographic information system, or mapping assets, and we need to get that updated. So city gave us some areas to focus on, and so that's what you see here in red. And we had a sub-consultant, TriSSI, go out and map all this, just using GPS equipment, gathering it in the field, mapping things that you can see. Think like hydrants, valves, manholes, catch basins for the storm system, and all that stuff was directly imported through ArcGIS Online to where we could see it and basically quality control it, pull it together into an updated map. So about 2,000 nodes were added, which is about 20% of the system was mapped in this way. And then we followed it up going through as-built drawings to really dive into the piping, because you can't see that from the surface, but we built connectivity because we needed this new mapping information to build our models. We needed to know not just where the things are that you see, but where do the pipes go and how do they connect together below ground so that we can get our models built. So we did that deep review of your as-builts for water and wastewater networks and basically gave you updated map information, and that was delivered in June of last year. And we had that same sub-consultant do a lot of condition assessment. So this feeds into that rehab side of things. Basically everything they could see. So, hydrants and valves, they're taking notes on what's the condition, good, fair, or poor, and what do they see. They also went into all your wastewater lift stations. I say into, I mean they looked. It was visual condition assessment from the surface and looked at all your electrical equipment and your pumps to see what's needed and come up with recommendations. We also pulled all of your own data. You had a lot of data we could use, like these daily check records of your equipment at your major facilities. And then we had work order history. How often have you sent people back out to the same asset over and over to fix it? That became a really big player for us with your water mains, because you can't inspect water mains easily. They're below grade and they're under pressure. So we leaned hard on that work order history to say if you've been going back to the same water line over and over and over again over the years to fix an issue, then that got elevated to the top for proactive renewal.
All right, if I may, this is the mayor again, very quickly. This is the end product that's been delivered. So what you see on that particular screen, the blow-ups for all of that are included in different tabs in this comprehensive document. So there is detail for everything that's up here. Thank you. Okay, good.
Then we had a second phase. So that first phase of condition assessment was very visual and things that are easy to see. What's hard to see is the stuff that's below grade. And there was a lot of emphasis on your wastewater system because you have a lot of what we call I&I, which is inflow and infiltration. To give you an idea, that's water that you don't want in your wastewater system. So when someone uses a shower, flushes a toilet, that's wastewater production from customers. That's the stuff you're getting paid for. If they're getting a water bill and they're a sewer customer, they're paying for that service. But if it rains and water gets in because it rained through leaks in your system, you're not getting paid for that. And you see a bunch of that flow at your plant, you have to deal with it. You have to treat it. It could cause your sewer system to overflow. So I&I is basically bad. And you want to get it out of your system. And y'all have a fair amount of I&I. To give you an idea, we based a lot of this assessment on 2021 data. because that's when we had a good stable year with a lot of reliable data from the various places where y'all were gathering data. And in that year, you had 1.4 million gallons a day of water production from your aquifers and your water treatment plants, 1.4. But you treated 2 million gallons a day of water at your wastewater plants, more than your water production, which is a relatively high number. And so we really wanted to target these locations of I&I. That's kind of the driver behind the rehab phase of our capital improvement plan, was targeting your wastewater system and finding that high I&I. We did it with a kind of tiered approach, where we did the cheapest thing first that looks at your whole system, and then selected an area and drilled down and did something more elaborate, and then selected an area from that and drilled down to try to get the best bang for your buck. And so what you see on the left side of the screen there is that desktop analysis. No one's going out in the field and looking at it. We're just taking your data, your own data for flows through your lift stations in the wastewater system, and we're mapping out how reactive is this area to rainfall. That's essentially what you're seeing. The darker shade of brown you see, the more that area flows after rain as compared to when it's dry. And so we saw a trend of downtown being a little heavier and a few hot spots around and north of the airport. And it was about the same time as we produced this map, we got a map from city engineers that marked up the downtown area as being where there's a lot of vitrified clay pipe, which is known to be a challenge. And so between those two things, we came up with the map you see on the right, where all those yellow dots are what we targeted for kind of the next level. So we started with this desktop analysis, targeted that yellow zone, and then we went and did manhole condition assessment. And this is a lot more elaborate than the condition assessment I already talked about. This is a standardized inspection where you have to have certification to do it. If two different people did it, you would get the same database out of it. And it produces this repeatable database that we can then use to very scientifically go say, you need to rehabilitate your manholes XYZ in these ways. We can send it through a kind of logical progression that accelerates this and that very systematically helps you identify what you need to do with your manholes. So we did that. It's called a risk-based assessment. And we came up with a number of projects to rehabilitate your most problematic manholes. There was a general trend that the manholes with the most problems were brick. That's where we saw the most infiltration coming in, and that's kind of typical because you tend to see a lot more infiltration getting in between the bricks and brick manholes. And then the third phase of this, where we drilled down to the most expensive thing you can do, but you don't want to do it across your whole system because it's expensive, is CCTV, where you actually run a camera through the pipe and then you identify defects in the pipe. And we reserved enough budget for the sub-consultant to do 2 miles of CCTV. And they did that here on the east side of downtown, up and down 2 streets where the worst performing manholes were, or the worst looking manholes from the earlier results. And they found some interesting stuff. There's one kind of defect code in this standardized inspection called an infiltration gusher, where water is not just dripping into the pipe, but it's coming in sideways, like a little jet. And they found 4 of those after rainfall, well after rainfall, which was, I think, pretty significant evidence of I&I getting in. And that area kind of trended with what Bobby said about how it reacts. You know, anecdotally, the engineers know that when it rains, the biggest lift station in that area feels it. And so that gave us some really good targets, hopefully some low-hanging fruit for y'all to go out and rehabilitate those pipes and get the I&I out of your system.
Excuse me, let me ask a quick question. This is Dave Riley,
Sure.
one of the councilmen. And my question has to do with a few years ago, we did several of those pipes. We did the looking inside the pipes as well as replacing the internal, sleeving the pipes. Did they, were they left out of the investigation that you did? Or are you not aware of that?
Most likely. We based our investigation purely on the results of the manhole inspections that we did, and then targeted those 2 streets on the east side of downtown.
Thank you. Well, it was downtown where we did most of that re-sleeving, so hopefully it wasn't the same.
We did not see In the results we got, we did not see much, I don't think any rehabilitated pipe where we went.
Okay.
It was pretty much vitrified clay. If it had been rehabilitated, I don't think we would have seen 4 infiltration gushers.
Okay, thank you.
So that drove the rehab CIP. So we had kind of this phase 1, based on your data and based on that high level assessment from the surface. And then we had this phase 2 where we had 2 sub-consultants kind of go deeper into the wastewater system. We pulled together the rehab CIP. We also appended to that the city's stormwater list. This list was provided by Bobby. It was from your 2008 plan and updated a few years ago. He asked us to include that in the plan. And so that's in the plan, and that's why you see that in the appendix. And that's why in the rehab CIP, you'll see the stormwater cost is at $7 million. That cost is basically that list that was provided by the city. And everything else you see in here, the water and the wastewater, was what we developed. Emphasis for the wastewater system is continuing what you just talked about and what we did, which is continuing to do this TV and finding those things and addressing them. Because as you'll see as we get further along, the forecasts show that you don't have a lot of headroom within your permit capacity at your wastewater plants. You're pretty close, or you're at least a lot closer to your capacity in wastewater than you are in water. And so part of the solution for the expansion is going to be you need to expand your plants, but you can buy yourselves time by doing rehabilitation and trying to get the I&I out of your wastewater system. And please ask questions. I know I'm going fast because I know we have 30 minutes.
I do have a quick question. This is Councilmember James. So you mentioned being able to buy some time by identifying and rehabbing those pipes that were troublesome. And I'm looked through the summary, the executive summary that you provided. And so do you have maybe the next steps in terms of which ones we might want to capture next?
I would say continue in the downtown area.
Okay.
We did not prioritize, as part of that, we did not prioritize next places for CCTV, but based on what we saw, I would continue in the downtown area. Anything relatively near the coast. That's the biggest thing that I think we noted was that a lot of those infiltration gushers were after rainfall, which indicates it could be seawater. Those pipes were below sea level. So I would continue in the downtown area and as close to the coast as you can.
All right, thank you.
So that's the rehab CIP. Now we touch on the capacity component, which is based on forecasting and modeling. So early on, very early in the project, we came to Bobby with some possible data we could use for forecasting. As planners, we like to use data that's publicly available so that you can always justify it. You can say, we used this. There's the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget. They had population forecasts for the whole county. Those forecasts were saying about a 20% increase in population over the next 30 years. So think 10,000 people for the whole county. And then there was your comp plan that had, I believe it was 5,000 to 11,000 people within the next 50 years. And so we started out saying, which of these do you want to use? And the engineers sent us a bunch of drawings saying, make sure this is included. And so we looked at it. And so we're looking at things like Cumberland Inlet, the airport, the Commerce Park at the airport, Winding Way, all that stuff to the north. And then the elephant in the room was Exit 1. That came a little bit later on, the annexation agreement for the Radiant development over on the west side of town. And so we got all that included and we pulled it together and realized this is a lot bigger than any of those population forecasts that we were looking at. And so we backed up and came up with a different approach where we took all of your known developments, and those are